Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to Dingo Talk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is From the Sideline, a D3 Football Coaches Roundtable. We have three more coaches to finish up our sixth and final table. I'm going to introduce them right now, starting with Coach Larson at Carnegie Mellon. Coach Larson, welcome back, and tell us a little bit about Carnegie Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Carlo, for having us. My name's Ryan Larson, head football coach at Carnegie Mellon. Just finished up my third season, going into our fourth. We're located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kind of a larger, research institution. So, the very unique thing about D3 is you get all different types of schools and sizes and such. And so we're kind of on that bigger scale. We're actually about 3 blocks away from the University of Pittsburgh, which I don't think most people, recognize or know. So we're pretty urban and kind of a big college environment. We are going to be in the Centennial Conference next year, and our other sports, aside from football, play in the UAA, which is a pretty national, travel-based Division III conference.
And Coach, before we ask why the move to the Centennial?
Yeah, I think it's D3 landscape's changing a lot. We all know that. We see, changes happening in conferences everywhere. There was an opportunity when the Centennial lost a few teams a few years back with Susquehanna, Moravian, and Juniata, that they were, out, I think, looking a little bit. Finding 4 out-of-conference games is really hard. I'm sure these other coaches could tell you. Finding out-of-conference games is a challenge. So there was that part of it. We felt like the Centennial was a great opportunity for us to travel more. It's something that, our other student athletes, I referenced it earlier with the UAA, they're jumping on planes to Atlanta and New York and Boston and Rochester and just trying to mimic that experience that, the other student athletes at Carnegie Mellon are getting. And obviously everyone knows the Centennial is a really competitive league. And so the opportunity to play against that competition was exciting. And then 3 out-of-conference games is exciting. It allows us to schedule really nationally. The 3 out-of-conference games we have next year, University of Chicago, Wisconsin, La Crosse, and Barry in Georgia. So maybe schools that we would never get those opportunities that are really exciting for us.
Well, Coach, I'm glad to have you back. Moving on, my Mustang friend over there, Scott Benzel, Westminster. Coach Benzel, talk to us about Westminster.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carlo. Shout out to Mighty Must. I'm really excited to get back on here with you and appreciate everything you're doing for our level. Westminster obviously is a school that some people may or may not be familiar with, but those that are from the area and are aware of the history, we have 6 national championships in our school history, and that's such a unique and powerful thing to say when you talk to young men about giving them to come play here. We have a standard here that's been around for a long, long time. It's certainly predated me, going back as far as Harold Burry, who was also in a national college football band. Recent past Fosco, who was in the NAIA days. So we're really, really great tradition. And Westminster's a small private liberal arts school. We're only a little rural. We're out in, a little bit north of Mercer County. But we're to major cities in terms of Pittsburgh, Cleveland, all within the hour. So, this will be my 12th season at Westminster, my 21st overall coaching in college football, and just blessed to be there, man. And like you said, Pittsburgh native, grew up in the area, have a lot of appreciation for the football in this as well. So, to be.
And Coach, I got to ask you, did I see that you guys won't be in Geneva this year?
Yeah, how about that?
A little strange, right? I mean, that's a rivalry that goes back way past both of us.
It's 1800s. to be honest with you, it's a little bit of a sore spot for our alumni and theirs. Don't quite get it, but I do know with our unbalance into our league, there was some unique things from a scheduling standpoint, and it really, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to play again one of those rivals that we have played literally 130 some times because of the scheduling here. So Coach Larson mentioned it. College football and scheduling, it's kind of crazy. It's unfortunate, but it's buddy.
And then, so Coach, welcome back. It's always a great time to talk to you. It's, nice to have a fellow Plum guy. So there's a couple of things I could say that get recognized very quickly. And then lastly, for wrapping this show up, Coach Dietz of DePauw. Welcome back, Coach. Talk to us about DePauw.
I appreciate you guys. This has always been a good thing, and great to talk with coaches and do this roundtable. I think is really a good idea. So I may have some technical difficulty, so I apologize for that based on my location. But DePauw University is a great university. We're the #1 ranked liberal arts school here in Indiana. We're located just under an hour west of Indianapolis. We have about 2,000 students, and we have our own business school. So that has been a big thing for us academically, for those students, those recruits that want to study business. We have a great business school, a lot of alums. We have over 35,000 alumni. And so, we're great at pre-med, we're great at pre-law, the kinesiology, exercise science, and really the business fields are some of our biggest ones that we have. So I've been at DePauw for 15 seasons. I was an assistant under Bill Lynch, but got to learn under legendary guys like Tim Reha, Nick Morosis. So I have a great network of people around me. And grew up with, coaching and playing with, Mike Leonard, who's now back at Franklin College, and had some great people. Wayne Perry was my head coach. So I had some really great mentors here. And so I've been at DePauw for 15 years. I was assistant coach for the first 10 and, been the head coach for the last 5, and we've won the last 4 conference championships and had a chance to go to the playoffs and play Coach Larson up there. And so it's been a really good run over the last 4 years, and excited for the next 4.
Hey, Coach, I got to ask, what has kept you at DePauw for 15 seasons?
That's a great question. I think DePauw is such a great place. The people are awesome, but it's a great education, and so we can recruit really good people. Our culture is amazing. We have great kids, great culture. It's located near Indianapolis. I actually live in a suburb of Indianapolis, so we got some roots down there, and DePauw is a fantastic place, great campus. And so the combination of the academics, the athletics, the campus life, it's hardly, you hardly ever bring people to campus and they don't like the campus. They love the campus. So it's just selling them on our vision and getting them to invest in their son's education and want to pay for private college. And that's the thing that all the coaches on here struggle every single day. But we're all at great universities, and to be in a place where you can build a program and build a legacy is something special, and we found something really special at DePauw.
Well, I'm glad to have you back, and we're going to jump right into the questions. Coach Larson, you're going to lead us off. What's a change that you would like to see at the Division III level across the nation?
Yeah, if you'd asked me that about a year ago, or 2 ago, I said obviously the playoffs were really fortunate that was a change, and I know it's certainly not perfect yet with, looking at MPI and how you kind of work through that. But one thing that I would say is, all the other sports have been given a pretty loose way to use their days throughout the year. They have these 100-something countable days, and they can kind of use them whenever they want. And we're still pretty regimented, both preseason, in season, and then obviously in the spring. I'm cognizant. I understand football, has acclimation and there's some different stuff there, but I would love to see, maybe a little bit more flexibility to be able to use our days. And then with that, with spring ball, obviously more opportunity to wear more pads and not jokingly play underwear football and helmets only, more shoulder pad days, maybe even, the opportunity to have a full pad day or 2. I don't think it needs to be an insane amount, but I think just more opportunity that mimics D1 and D2 from the football standpoint, and then more opportunity in the offseason that mimics the rest of D3, I think would be really advantageous for, student athletes at all the different Division III football institutions.
And it's interesting. I don't know what Coach Benzel and Coach Dietz are going to say. The spring ball conversation has been at all 6 of these tables, and I'm sure if we continue with coaches, it'll continue to be a conversation. Coach Benzel, same question.
Yeah, I don't prefer the answers, and I think the one thing I would say is I would like football people to make football-related decisions. A bunch of football guys that care about this game, the stewardship of this. I think you would do. Carson touched on it. And how in the world do we have such less opportunities to prepare our guys to physically go out and play and do it in a safe and a real manner as with the opportunities that we have? It's just, to me, it's people that maybe particularly don't have, unless I'm incorrect on this, I do believe that voting members that don't have football still make decisions on football, and I just don't understand how that's even a possibility. So, let's get that cleaned up. Let's get together and try to do some things. The other thing I'm going to say, and this is really probably a little different, and actually not. I actually think the playoffs, we have too many teams in the playoffs. I like back to be unique and think outside the box. Would love to see us be more of a BCS mode, maybe 8 the playoffs. That being said, I also think there should be more of a push towards bowl. Growing up there's nothing more than get an opportunity to play for a bowl game to win a championship. Selfishly, we had a chance to play in that Hall of Fame bowl at Tom Benson Stadium. And no disrespect to anybody that played in the playoffs, unless they won a national championship or they won, they're in the semifinals. I felt like our experience in a neutral site in an NFL stadium was way more for us in terms of their experience. So, creative and think about it. Where they can't play a regional bowl game where there are 8 teams brought in and do that across the country. Something unique that would differentiate ourselves between maybe we're seeing right now at the Division I and Division II levels. So those are a couple things that I thought about. Pretty cool.
Makes sense. Coach Dietz, same question.
Yeah, Coach Larson took my answer. It's the old elementary school cop-out where we need to go to the days model and give, because every school is different, right? So we're talking about off-season, going to a days model instead of 5 consecutive weeks that we have currently, 16 practices over 5 weeks. Just because every school is different, right? Every school academic schedule is different. Everybody is in a different spot in the United States. So giving the ability and the freedom to be able to use those days in different ways as it works with their exam schedule, their academic schedule, their spring break schedule, the weather that they have, like whatever that is, we get pretty busy that time of spring. We get a chance to play football because the spring sports are underway and everybody's got some athletic trainer issues one way or another. So giving football the ability to mix days and do it a different way, I think isn't going to be a hard change to make, but can really, give schools flexibility, help ease the need for trainers and things like that. So I'm not going to get into what we need to do in more shoulder pad days and stuff like that. We try to make the best of what we can, but I think an easy change would be going to the days model. So since Coach Larson already took that, I'll also add, I know there's already been some talk and things like that, but we need to add replay in the playoffs. I think everybody is required to have X amount of cameras going and things like that. And so if they don't catch it, they don't catch it. But, I still am sitting on some sour grapes here playing Johns Hopkins and a couple replay here and there. And I think it may be a different outcome. So Johns Hopkins, a great team, but we had a couple plays that I thought we were in the end zone on that with replay would have been pretty obvious. So, but they beat us with what they did, and congrats to them and going on to the Final Four. It was great. But I think getting it right in the playoffs, using replay the best that we can, the best of the ability would be to the benefit. And like Coach was saying, like getting the postseason play special, and to get to postseason play, I mean, you want to get it right? The referees aren't trying to, screw up the game. They're trying to get it right, but sometimes they don't, and sometimes you need a little bit of video help to do that. So I honestly don't know where we're at with that, but getting that all throughout the playoffs, I think, would be a big deal, and to get things right as best we possibly can.
Well, and that you guys have kind of reiterated a lot of what we've heard. We had Coach Couch talked about expanding maybe when everybody comes back for preseason camp, so that it's maybe a week earlier, so that we could avoid schools having orientation and the freshmen matriculating or and all the other things that come in with the beginning of the school year. Coach Hilvert on last week's roundtable talked about maybe bringing it up a week so that we could be pre-New Year's for the national championship, and kind of keeping everything into 1 year. And like I said, the spring ball conversation we've had with every other coach has been pretty much, I don't think anybody should be questioning whether you guys are trying to, bash each other's brains in April or March. I don't see you guys doing that now or going into preseason camp. It's about getting everything right, not about killing your teammates. So the safety precautions and whatnot is a big conversation that we've had as well, about why spring ball hasn't been expanded and whatnot. Next up is Coach Benzel leading how has the NIL and transfer portal affected D3 recruiting, if at all?
I think it's affected both negatively and positively. In regards to names and likeness, we do have a situation where our young people, our student athletes, can take advantage of name, image, and likeness, and so we signed up with a national program. We also have a collective, as our collectives put in place to, again, help differentiate ourselves from maybe some competitors in terms of opportunities for our young people. So I think those are all positives. In the end, the thing that we all have to be conscious of is, the cost of school and the cost of attendance. It's been a while since I've been in college. It's astronomical, and there's a lot of families that are making decisions on whether or not they can afford to go to college. And so if there's some opportunities to help, I think that's something we need to look at. And I think it's a pot. In terms of the transfer portal, I think you're going to find a football coach on these calls that would think those transfer portal is a good thing. I think it's everything that's wrong in college football in terms of guys just bumping around. Now, at our level, fortunately, we are more secure in that, and I think that's a good thing. You don't see it as much in a Division III level, but there are some situations where, we've got a guys, for example, our leading receiver 2 years ago transferred out, and you know what? He did some for him to help him and us and things like that. So not a negative perhaps for him, but it's a challenge for us. I think it puts more emphasis on a year-to-year basis in terms of team management, but that's happens anyway with roster turnover the way it can be, especially at the small school levels. Again, I think on this call is saying schools are a little bit different, right? Challenge. there's a lot of things that are happening with these guys. In the end, your goal is to play great, but the reality of it is, there's going to be life after football that needs to be emphasized. First, let's jump school to school to school and see ultimately where that's going to take us. It has hurt us a little bit in terms of losing some players, but I think we're probably in a situation where not much we can do about it, Carlo. We just got to, build our rosters, try to reinforce why Westminster and why it's important to get a degree.
All right. Coach Dietz?
I think, always get the trickle down effect, right? It's in Division I, eventually trickles Division II, and eventually it all, right? And so, and like Coach Benzel said, I don't know if anybody would say the transfer portal has been a great thing for college programs or coaches. I mean, just talk to any MAC coach and see what they think of the transfer portal. I think everybody's going to work for your own and you spend it for things like that. I mean, we don't get a ton of transfers fall. We're recruiting at school kids, and we're selling the families that this is going to be a 4-year decision for them. It's not just a football decision. It's about the academics. It's about getting connected to the industry. Not your for the next few years, right? So when you have a culture and you're recruiting it that way, I don't think we had any guys in the transfer portal this year. Making it work for you, making it work for your program can be really good. So that's not that we're against transfer portal, we're anti-transfer portal. I just think the way we recruit, the way we sell our program, our kids are acting in our program, they're for Paul, they're in it to get relationships and get great education and get the internships and play a great football. And maybe it's because we've been winning, seeing that, but I like to think that we're doing it the right way, and players understand what they're getting into when they commit to come to DePaul. So we'll have a transfer or two here and there, but that's really probably a kid that we've already been recruiting throughout the high school process. They chose to go somewhere else, weren't happy, and then really liked our message and our coaches and our players, and basically check out to us once they're in the portal or once they've signed the soft release and today to looking back to DePaul. So I know NIL is great, and for the athletes and college is expensive, just like I said, but it's a moving target with us, and money's tight every Division III, and so anything I think we can do to help athletes, I think, is great. But I don't know if anybody's fully figured out the NIL deal and how to distribute it fairly, or who to give it to, and all that stuff. So I just try to do the best with what we can, with a great culture, bring in great kids here, and coach them up, get them great education, and get them connected with alums and internships, and get them off making a bunch of money. So so that's probably all I really have to say about the NIL portal. So let's kick it over to Coach Larson, see what he has to say about it.
Absolutely. Coach Larson, take it away.
Yeah, I would say our experience is also pretty similar to what Coach Dietz said. It's 2 subjects, which I know at the Division I level, it's not 2 subjects. It's really more one together. From an NIL perspective, we have a few guys that have, some deals, but it's honestly been more facilitated by themselves, or they've done it. To Coach Dietz's, point, I had a incoming freshman affectionately ask me, what do we do with NIL? And I said, man, we're old school. We're going to help you get great internships and great jobs. That's what we're going to do. And that's, just our way of doing it. I'm not saying that having NIL at D3 by any means is a bad thing. I think it can be a really positive thing, especially if it's used the right way. It's just not something that we dive into a lot. I think that we also look at, probably from a fundraising perspective, how we're doing things more like capital campaign based. Like, we're redoing our turf right now, and we just opened up a new athletic facility. And, obviously with traveling more in a new conference, like those types of things that go back to player experience. So I think we've just kind of focused our money that way. And that's not to say that we were anti-NIL. It's just that's kind of how we felt was the right way to do it. In terms of transfer portal, man, I mean, almost like Coach Dietz almost took the words out of my mouth. We're 1 or 2 guys a year and they always have a connection. It's either we recruited them, out of high school, it's their brothers on the team, it's their, their dad or their brother, went here. It's some type of connection. I joke with recruits, like, I don't even know what my portal login is. Like, we're not doing it. It's just not really our thing. And been really fortunate in the 3 years I've been here. We've only had one young man go in the portal, and he's still here. And so we're fortunate that we don't lose to the portal. But I also think we're probably fortunate that we don't have to go to it a lot either. Now, I'll say I've worked at different places. When I worked at Stevenson University, in the Baltimore area, we had to get transfers more. It was different. Our mission as a football program was different, and how it served the university as an enrollment piece, particularly for males, as we were at a school that used to be all female. So, I want to sit here and say too, like, oh, just because I'm at Carnegie Mellon doesn't mean that I look down on transfer portal. And like, I completely understand how it can work in a positive way. But I think we all agree, no one wants to see one of their student athletes leave. No one wants that conversation when the kid comes in and says, I'm going to go in the portal. I don't think any of us ever got into college football for that reason. We got in for it because we want to develop young men and, see them graduate and see that 4-year or 5-year growth. But at the same time, it's a reality now. And I just think it's how each individual school has to deal with it. And there's definitely not this is how D3 deals with it. Just like Coach Dietz said, D1, like the SEC is dealing with it really different than the MAC, and they're not comparable. And I think it's the same thing.
Coach Dietz, what's the biggest misconception in Division III football?
Yeah, I'll take this one first. I'll go first on this one. I think it's really two things. I think, and let's preface it by saying, I think it's our job, head coach, I think it's our job, recruiters, to make sure, try to paint a picture for what their first year experience is like and what Division III football is going to be and what our program and things like that. So there are no misconceptions. I think Coach Benzo and Coach Larson would say, like, that's what we're trying to do as recruiters and head coaches, is like, hey, let's get everything on the table and let's paint you a picture of what this life's really going to be. But I think I think conception some people still can do is, hey, it's D3 football. I'm a good high school player. I have buddies that are going to go play Division I. I can go to DePaul and I can get on the field and start right away. Right? It's not until they look, this guy's better. How are these guys not at better places? And I know the other two coaches on this call are at great places that have great players that they're going to see that too. And so we try to really paint a good picture for what our guys are going to experience. But I think as much as you do, those kids have their self-confidence, and we want them to have that confidence, right? But I think that can be one thing. I think another misconception about D3 football, they go into a D3 private pool like it's just going to be really, really expensive and we're not going to afford it. And it may be true in some cases, but in other cases, I think we can be affordable. I think we can be really good options for a student athlete, for their family. And it's all about finding the right fit. And I think that's what we do as recruiters. At DePaul is trying to find the right fits for our program, both on the field and off the field. And it's a little bit of an investment in their future. But for the most part, like, you can go play Division I football in Patriot League or Pioneer League, and a Division III school can be much cheaper. So I think just getting out of the heads that I'm going to go to a really expensive private school, it's going to cost me, may have a bigger sticker price, but at the end of the day, with financial aid, with tuition, with scholarships, all that stuff, like it may be more affordable than you think it is. So give it a chance.
Coach Larson?
Yeah, I think really similar to what Coach Dietz said. I think that the talent level piece, I understand with 240 plus Division III football programs, there's going to be differences in the layers and levels. But the misconception of the talent that it's just barely an upgrade from high school is a fallacy. And I think on top of that, the commitment level that it takes to be successful. I think that, sometimes there's misconceptions that's like, oh, it's D3, it's not scholarship. So, I won't have to work as hard in the off season maybe, or there won't be as much of a time commitment, so on and so forth. And I think, I can't speak for every program. I know in ours, don't think there's any difference. I mean, if you want to be great, there's work that needs to be done. So I think that those things are really not true. And yet again, I know there's different levels and layers of D3, and I can't speak for every program. I think the other thing is exactly what Coach Dietz said is the financial piece. There's just, and Coach Benzel referenced this. Like we do have a problem as a entire, educational system of price tag. It is getting out of control. But, speaking from a Carnegie Mellon standpoint, I'm really proud to work at a place that meets 100% of need. Right. And so I'm really proud to say that, if the kid has a demonstrated interest that he cannot afford $1 to go here, he will not pay $1 to go here. And that's pretty amazing. Now, on the flip side, there's young men that we recruit that can pay the whole thing. And then that's where the parents have to make a decision, and that ROI is worth it to them. So, I do think D3 schools have been a lot more creative over the last probably 10, 15 years that I've been in this level of being better with financial aid and finding the right student athletes that can get academic scholarships and all those types of things. But I would definitely tell any recruit, like, don't just assume because it's D3 that it's going to be the full price tag, or it's going to necessarily be a ton more than a D2 or maybe a non-scholarship D1 level, like Coach Dietz said. Like there's many, many times where it actually can be more affordable. And, maybe even a better education.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach Benzel? I think Coach is having a little bit of problems, so we'll come back to him for that one.
Everybody's making
there he is.
really good points, and I can't bring a whole lot more to that, but I would say some of the okay. You got me?
You're cutting in and out, Coach. There we are. You're good right there. Just we need to get a hanger. We'll just hold you out, hold an arm out there, and we'll wrangle that.
No. Better?
Nope. There it is.
Oh my gosh. Good?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, buddy. Again, I can't bring a whole lot more to that discussion that was just already discussed, but I will say maybe a big misconception is this isn't Division I. You're going to have to do a little more, and this isn't stuff's not just going to kind of quote unquote get handed to you. You're going to have to be in class. Some of these guys have to work. There's a lot that goes into it. I think there's this conception that you're playing college football and everybody's going to be treated like guys at Alabama, and it's not that way. Some of it to me is more rewarding in the sense been very blessed and fortunate enough to have some former Division I guys on our staff, our coaching staff. And this isn't a knock on them, but some of the small college guys that are on our coaching staff, man, they have to work, and they get it, they understand it. So it's a little bit of a shock. A lot of kids have this perception what they're seeing on Twitter or X or is what's going to happen when they show up to our doorstep, and everything's going to kind of be taken care of. It's different, at our level, it's different. You're going to have to be true student athlete, and there's a lot of different challenges that you're going to have to meet that, in my opinion, creates even a little bit more harder work, which I think in the end is a positive thing.
All right. I'm going to throw you guys a curveball. There's a question before the last question. D3 Direct put up a post yesterday on X talking about what the parents' role is in recruiting. So from a coach's standpoint, what is the parents' role when helping a student make the decision, and just in general, what's the role that the parents are going to play in that? Obviously the financial side, probably, maybe. But Coach Larson, you want to start that one?
Yeah, wow, that's a that's a good curveball. Yeah, I mean, without doubt, obviously, most of the time it's going to be a financial, but I think it's a support. But let your young man, let your kid, you know, go through this process and kind of figure it out a little bit for themselves. It's the biggest decision that they're going to make until they probably pick whoever they marry, right? So it's a big decision, and it's a huge opportunity for them to grow up as a man too, and so I've always found that the parents that are maybe a little bit more hands off and a little bit more laid back in like the one-on-one meeting with me and stuff like that are kind of letting, their son kind of drive it, have always been kind of the most impressive young men once we get them here because you could tell that their
Mm-hmm.
parent had given them kind of that responsibility. So I always, would encourage parents like, yeah, I mean, it's your baby. Of course, you're invested and you care, and there's care on so many different levels. But let your son ask the questions. Let your son, hear the answers and decipher them and kind of go through it. And maybe away from the coaches now, kind of go through it and figure it out. It's the parents sometimes that are in those meetings that just drive the whole thing. That you don't even feel like you got to know the kid. All you got to know was the
Right.
parent, and then it's like, well, the parent's not coming to play. So I've always really enjoyed parents that kind of approach it that way, and the young men that have been allowed to do that, I think, have really, come to college more prepared and ready and more confident in their decisions and ready to do the things that they needed to do from a communication standpoint, a time management standpoint. Um, but it is a hard line. I mean, I got two young kids. I know these guys got kids. Like, you care about them. You want to make the best, and you're trying to trust someone. So of course you want to ask those questions. So there's a balance for sure.
Right. Coach Benzel?
Yeah, in terms of involvement with parents, the one thing I tell our coaches on our coaching staff, you need to reach out to the parents and the coaches. There's been actually a little bit of a difference in terms of recruiting. Some of they have relationship with the player, yet they don't involve the parent, or they don't even call the high school coach, which again, I grew up with Coach Rad and Coach Walton, two former NFL guys, old timers, have been around a long time. And we were taught you had to bring the parent, and you certainly wanted the high school coach involved. So I agree with what Coach Larson's saying, in sense of like, this is your experience, this is your decision. But I also see it on the other side of like, it's hard to get a real good feel for young guys and where they want to be, because, it's their first time taking a major decision. Those of us that are fortunate enough to be married and have families and things like that, I would go to my dad for, some critical advice, and, he would steer me in some really good directions. But there's some young people out there that maybe don't have those opportunities that I did, and maybe don't have all their parents there. So just to piggyback on that, I personally believe that you want to get as many hands involved in that. Ultimately, yes, it is the young guy and it is their decision, but I'm a big believer in having multiple people involved in those decisions.
Okay. And Coach Dietz?
Yeah, I think it's a balancing act. I mean, I can certainly relate to Coach Larson, and when you get the family in the room with head coach, family, kid, like, you want the kid driving that. We've all been in those head coach talks where the parents don't shut up and the kid's rolling his eyes and all those things. But at the end of the day, these kids are 18 and 17 years old, and most of them don't know what the best thing is for them. They don't know what they want to do, right? They don't know what the next 4 years looks like. They don't even know what next week looks like, let alone 4 years or the next 50 years of their life, right? So for me, it's always a red flag if a recruit comes on a recruiting visit with us and he comes by himself, or he brings a bunch of teammates, because he's probably not looking at the right things of what DePaul and Carnegie Mellon and Westminster is all about, right? Because they can't see past it. They're looking at the jerseys and the uniforms and what the food was like, and that's all very important. But at the end of the day, you're going to a college to set yourself up for the rest of your life, and a parent is going to provide that perspective, right? And so making sure they're there, they're supportive, and making sure on your recruiting visit, you're selling the parents just as much as you're selling the kid, without them knowing that you're selling them. Right. And it's not just on your staff, it's your school, it's your program. It's what your school can do for their kid, right? Because at the end of the day, you want the kid to say, I don't know, I'm leaning this way, I'm leaning that way. And you want mom or dad to say, hey, look, listen, you've done a great job this years with the pros and the cons, and they all know their kid better than all of us, right? So they can help steer them in the right way if they're on your side. So, but I think it's vitally important to get mom and dad on campus so they get some perspective, right? We're giving the day to the kid, but I want them there because I want them to hear everything, because the 18-year-old is going to hear something different than the 40-year-old parent's going to hear. And I think that is huge and that is key. But as far as what Ryan's talking about, like, I don't want to call the parents every week. Like, I don't want to develop the relationship with the parents. I want them to know that we're there and we're going to be great adult mentors for their kid on campus. But at the end of the day, I want the parents to be like, hey, we're there. It's a great place. We love it. We'll call you if we have questions, but we're going to let them steer this process. And I think that's the best way to do it, like these coaches said.
Right. All right, Coach Benzel, you're finishing us up. What is a piece of advice you would give to young coaches trying to break into the D3 sphere? We lost his hanger again. I had it. He was golden. Coach, I'm gonna come back to you. Coach Dietz, you can give. What do you think? What's a piece of advice you would give to a up and coming coach or a senior this year that is thinking about making that move to the headset and clipboard? So what do you got for me?
I'm going to tell them, I hope you're not doing it for the money. Because in D3, we all have limited budgets and things like that. I think it's a great profession. I think it's something that we all love to do and we do. So I think it's a great, but I think they have to understand that they're not going to be in it for the money. And because a lot of the way that we all started was for doing it for really cheap. So my first college job, I was a stipend guy. I think I made $2,000 my first year in college. And, I had to take multiple stipend jobs, before I got on full time. So what I'm going to tell those guys is to stay humble. There's no job that's too small for you guys. And so I really try to model that here at DePaul and be more of a servant leader. But we have a couple guys right now trying to get into college coaching. So I tell them to network their butts off and don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call people and expect people not to call you back. But at the end of the day, if you love football and you have a passion for mentoring young men, like this can be an awesome life. You get to stick around the game of football. You get to try to make a living out of it if you get put in the right situations. But volunteer if you have to. Just get involved with a really good program that has really good people around you so you can learn a lot, right? And don't worry about the division. Don't worry about the level. Just get on somewhere where they're going to invest in you. They're going to value you as a person. They're going to value input and just, really dive into the football, really dive into the mentor piece and the coaching piece. But I think the biggest thing, and I should have probably led with this, but I think the biggest thing that maybe prohibits me from hiring high school coaches to be in Division III is really the recruiting piece. Because these coaches here would tell you, like, recruiting is at least half of our job, if not more. And so having the recruiting piece is going to be a huge key. So when you're in that volunteer role or you're in that stipend role, ask what you can do in recruiting. It's not all about the football. It won't be, especially at Division III. You have to learn the recruiting piece. You have to have your own area. You have to have your own guys. You have to work and learn how to develop relationships, and you have to learn how to do that. And so for guys looking to get in Division III, like, lean into the recruiting piece just as much as you lean into the X's and O's, because that's what's going to make you a successful coach anywhere in college, whether you're at Ohio State or whether you're at Carnegie Mellon or DePaul University or Westminster. It's all about the recruiting. It's all about it's all about learning as much as you can. And so sometimes I'll talk to guys that are interested in getting to college coaching and they don't have any interest in wanting to do the recruiting piece. They just want to do the X's and O's. And that's very far from what our jobs are all about.
Right. Coach Benzel, we're going to come back to you. I see all movement and everything. So what one piece of advice you would give to a young coach trying to break into D3?
Just be where your feet are planted. Do the best job you can at the level you're at, because it'll all take care of itself. So, and find a mentor. Find somebody that can really, bring you along. So sometimes there's a lot of great football coaches at a lot of different levels. Just because they're at maybe a bigger school doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna be the best fit for you. They might not have time for you. So, like I said, just definitely be where your feet are planted, do the best job you can. And as Coach Dietz referenced, if you can be great at Westminster, you can be great at Ohio State. They'll find you, no question.
Right. And lastly, Coach Larson, what's a piece of advice you would give to a young coach coming into the ranks?
Yeah. 100% agree with what both of these guys said. I mean, you can't, to Coach Benzel's point, like you can't be looking at the next job or thinking about the next thing. You got to do the best job at what you're at. And don't get in it for the money, like Coach Dietz said. Anytime we have guys, whether it was here, other places I've been that have talked about wanting to coach, I'm like, all right, well, when you're done playing, like come out and help us out in the spring and get your feet wet and figure out if this is really what you want to do. Like come out and get involved and get away from your position group, go to a different position group and see if you still enjoy it. Right. Because you got to detach yourself from being a player. But I would say, especially as a young coach, like once you get in, and this kind of goes to Coach Benzel's point, is like, find a way to bring value to the staff, regardless of your pay and your title. Like sometimes there's jobs that need to be done that people don't want to do. We all can agree as coaches that have been in it, like being the video guy is not the most fun job, right? But it's got to get done and it's vital. Recruiting is really, really important. Maybe there are areas that maybe people just don't really want to pick up. Maybe you're an East Coast school and no one really wants the West Coast because you don't want to deal with the time change. Like just find a way to bring value to yourself. Coach Dietz and I both were brought up by a similar mentor in Bill Lynch. I worked for free my first year at Indiana for him while I was getting my master's. Then I was fortunate enough to just work as hard as I could and be where my feet were, like Coach Benzel said. And I got promoted up to a quality control position my second year at Indiana. And so I do firmly believe that you got to really focus in on the job you're doing and be willing to do those things that maybe make other people's lives better because they don't want to do it or they don't have the time to do it, or their time is better suited doing something more important because they're higher up in the coaching level, and you're going to take that off of their plate. And people recognize that and they talk, and that'll help you. I mean, there's people from 15 years ago when I worked at Indiana that still are willing to help me now if I need it. So I think it's just really important, especially as a young coach, bring that value, stay where your feet are, work your butt off.
Coaches, I want to say thank you very much. But before I do that, I got to point out, I got to shout out a couple people. So first, if you have not yet and you're watching at home, make sure you check out QBs versus Cancer, Carter St. John's Foundation, where he has quarterbacks training high school kids, training junior high kids, and all the proceeds that get raised through that are donated to cancer research. So if you have not yet, again, that's QBsVersusCancer.com. Make sure you stay here every Thursday, 10 a.m. We have new coaches. We have groups of coaches coming back. This will be our last roundtable. And then coming in the fall, we have Voices in the Stands. That's producer Matt, myself, and a bunch of other chuckleheads that are we're gonna talk tailgate style about Division III football instead of acting like we're experts, because I'm not an expert and Matt's not an expert. So we're just gonna talk about what we're feeling. Those are the three things that I have to say. Now I can say thank you, Coach Benzel. Thank you, Coach Larson, and thank you, Coach Dietz, for wrapping up this Coaches Roundtable series that we're doing. I really appreciate you guys taking the time, and we'll catch you next time, Chuckleheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @Dingo Talk.